Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I welcome all of you back to another Dark Souls OST reaction. And oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. So I'm not necessarily going. We at some point I do want to have a few things to say about the bad OSTs in Dark Souls and probably Elden Ring, Bloodborne, and Sekiro as well. The bad ones are going to get talked about because um when it comes to bad OSTs in these sorts of games, I think it has more to do with the fact that it's through repetition, or it seems a little bit unfitting, or perhaps it just doesn't really say. Sometimes I think it's just they don't say a lot. There are OSTs that can convey a lot of very different things all at once, and there are some that can even go into like different shift and do different tones and go through different moods and stuff like that, depending on like the context of the fight and stuff like that. And nowhere is this better exemplified when we get to talk about him, the big man Slave Knight Gale, which I know is like possibly the best out of all of them, but that's still a while away. But while we are here today, ladies and gentlemen, the Bed of Chaos. Now, here's what you need to know, because I have in the works from a worst to best boss fights in the whole Dark Souls trilogy, and I am not even going to beat around the bush, ladies and gentlemen. The Bed of Chaos is out of the 88. I think it's either 93 or 94 boss fights in the whole trilogy. The Bed of Chaos is the worst. Yeah, I think Bed of Chaos is worse than the Giant Lord, the Royal Rat Vanguard, the Royal Rat Authority. Oh god, because here's the thing: the Bed of Chaos barely qualifies as a boss fight because, well, listen, I'm not actually going to sit here and rant about the problems with the boss fight, because they've been very well documented for very nearly 14 years, and I'll spend more time talking about it once I do get that video made. But I'm just going to put it to you guys like this. The best, kind of like what I said with Champion's Grave Tender, the best thing about this fight is the music. Because they built up the Witch of Izalith and her Daughters of Chaos as being a horrific, monstrous entity where chaos has consumed the whole of Izalith. It's consumed almost all the way to Blighttown, and her daughters from Quelaag to Quila, and even was that one called Quila? I'm not too sure. Even all the way up to the only son of Chaos, the Ceaseless Discharge. Now, the Ceaseless Discharge is easily one of the most tragic characters in the whole of the game, because he is just a horrifically mutated and mutilated amalgamation of what looks like thousands of spiders, a golem, a Balrog, and all culminated in nothing but spewing hot lava. And he goes down after like 3 hits when he tries to leap at you, and he just holds on for dear life. He's pathetic, but it's sad because he is so absolutely out of his depth, and possibly even maybe more tragic than Sif in many ways, but that's very, very up for debate. I mean, I get why the Ceaseless Discharge exists, but as a boss fight, it's still pretty weak, all things considered. But the Bed of Chaos is definitely a lot worse than Ceaseless Discharge, but as I said before, the music conveys that you're fighting one of the 4 great lords. You're fighting a being that is partly responsible for some of the major events and some of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome. I mean, to be fair, getting through the Demon Ruins and then Lost Izalith is a nightmare and a half in itself, but in fact, actually, while we're here, I should also make mention is that I also started another list as well about the worst to best areas in the Dark Souls trilogy. And believe it or not, I rated Lost Izalith as the worst out of all of them. I generally do believe Lost Izalith is worse than the Frigid Outskirts. And the Frigid Outskirts is so universally despised that, of course, they never tried anything like that ever again. But I still think Izalith is worse because, quite frankly, it's unfinished. At least the Frigid Outskirts was completed. So there's that, I suppose. But again, let's actually get into what happens when you slide down that tunnel. You pass all of those twisted charcoal roots, and you finally arrive at the bottom and confront, well, the Bed of Chaos. I suppose, the reason why it works, I suppose, is that there are so many different ideas and what sounds like different voices and notes trying to fight for dominance, and absolutely all of it just sort of clashes and collides together until it's almost completely indecipherable, which is, if that's not a good, that's a fantastic way to describe chaos. And remember the idea of calling this a bed of chaos, that this is where all of this lies. It all stems from this source. Now, with that being said, you may argue it could have gone further than this, but bear in mind, there's still quite a bit to hear. It doesn't just stop at this point. I should point out is that yes, I don't think it's nearly as good as like. Obviously, it's not going to be as good as other OSTs we've done before. Though, what I am going to say in defense of a lot of the ones from the first game is that obviously they're not going to be judged. I judge a lot of the OSTs in this sort of about what they are as opposed to what they're not. And when it comes to that sort of thing, that's why I look through things about that I know of that happen in the events of the game. And even with that being said, the Bed of Chaos still feels a little bit anticlimactic, in all honesty, because it just like there's no even like when you actually kill the thing, there's no like cut scene about the actual whatever the hell the Bed of Chaos is dying. It just sort of stops, and before you know it, there you are. You have another Lord Soul to your vessel, and it's just kind of what it is. It's more. I think honestly, the Bed of Chaos is sort of a little bit more for lore than it should be like viewed as an actual fight. But then again, people didn't like it when this was the case for the Dragon God and Demon Souls. So why they thought to bring back this sort of gimmick style fight for their new game 2 years later is beyond me. And bear in mind, ladies and gentlemen, no, they didn't try it again after this, which I'm glad for that, because nobody wanted this and nobody really asked for it. Even though the Bed of Chaos does sort of turn up again in Dark Souls 2, but we will get to that when the time comes, because it's sort of a bit more important to like the story for what we're getting into. So yeah, all things considered, I get what they were going for. I like the fact that it is what it is, and well, there you are. It should have been more, but I'm grateful and I'm glad what it actually is like. So there you are. That seems like a very terrible and confused conclusion, but there you are. That describes the Bed of Chaos in many ways. Terrible and confusing as a fight. The music's okay. And with all that being said and done, I'd like to see all of you guys again in the next video. Take care, and bye-bye for now.